Alright out there folks, how y'all doing? Welcome along to your 420 news today with your host Martin Condon. And today's 420 news was brought to you by Martin's World. Guys, hope you're all doing good out there. It's Wednesday, halfway through the week. I don't know if you guys are out working or if you're working from home or if you're laid off because of this whole pandemic crap. Whatever it might be or whatever you might be doing right now, I hope you're enjoying your 420. I know I am. I had some brownies here with me, so yeah, I was nibbling away as I was preparing today's 420 news. I have a little bit of news there to cover for you today, guys. Not a whole lot. I was getting caught up on a few different pieces I was reading into, kind of aside from the 420 news, and I kind of get distracted, dragged down wormholes, reading into studies and stuff like that. There was a study I was going to include in today's 420 news. It was a study where researchers are reporting that they're able to determine what THC and CBD levels are going to be in a cannabis plant based on the genetics of that cannabis plant. And then, like, after spending about a half an hour reading into this thing and trying to get an understanding of cannabis genetics, and it's a very complicated thing to kind of understand, alleles and all of this other complicated kind of stuff, I decided to exclude on it because it didn't really, it was more of a clickbaity article, to be honest. It's still not there yet. It's not within any definable range yet, so it isn't newsworthy at all. Even the fact I'm just kind of reporting on it now, it's just yeah, it was just more annoying that they were trying to look at it was looking at hemp and all of this in order to produce it, whereas it wouldn't be even a problem if prohibition wasn't there. You wouldn't need to be defining whether something is meeting these standards set by hemp guys. But anyway, that was just a little piece there. And I was going to disclude it, and now I've included it, as you do. Let me just check. Did I click that go live button? I did. Yeah, I'm just making sure I went live, not repeating the before where I forgot to click the go live button, because I forgot to click the recording button. Anyhow, I'll download it later. In other news, guys, what you see here is not a house in a state in America where they've legalized cannabis. No, it's not. This is a house in a state in America where they've not legalized cannabis. What you see here isn't a house being hotboxed with a load of smoke from cannabis consumers flowing out the window. No, it's a house with smoke coming out of it because the person living there decided to grow cannabis, and they decided to do a poor job on the electrical connections, and sadly the solar array, the panel which they were using to generate power, because whatever way they connected it anyway, there was a fault and it caused a fire. And it was an illegal cannabis grow that this person was powering with that solar array. And the reason why I want to include it in this is because, one, there's so many states now in America where cannabis is legal. I'd imagine if this was one of these states that person would have went that extra little bit, I'd imagine this power bank that they used, the solar power bank that they were using, that wasn't cheap. And I imagine that if they were able to, they would have paid an expert to come in and fit it in an expert way, with safety in mind, and they probably wouldn't have encountered this problem. But because they live in a state, it was in where was it? It was in Greenfield, Indiana, and Indiana still criminalizes cannabis growing, cannabis possession. So sadly, I think this is a result of prohibition, because in a state where it's legal for a person to grow at home, they would have got a qualified electrician in and they would have had it fit properly. So well done, guys, in Indiana who keep prohibition in place. There you go, a fine example of how prohibition works. A cannabis grower, trying to protect themselves by not, letting people know that they're growing cannabis, actually in turn putting themselves and the other people they live with at risk, because they just couldn't follow simple safety procedures and getting an electrician in, because loose lips sink ships. And when you're growing cannabis illegally, you want to have as little people as possible known And that's a big problem when it comes to kind of wiring up electrics, you know. So there you go, guys. If you're going to set up your cannabis grow illegally, don't skimp out on the electricals, you know. Get good quality assured products, you know. Make sure you have all your CE marks and all of this stuff, you know. Don't be buying your crap from for all your electronics from wish.com. Nothing against wish.com, but I just certainly wouldn't be buying higher energy consuming ballasts, you know, that require relays and stuff like that. That could be a fire hazard if they're not up to a certain standard. So just be forewarned, guys. If you're going to grow cannabis, just don't skimp out on your electronics. Or you could be getting the fire brigade coming, which will in turn bring the Gardai. So in other news, guys, in the UK, there was a big bust over there of £500,000 worth of cannabis plants. So £500,000 of cannabis plants were discovered in the UK, and they were discovered actually in a derelict warehouse. So that's kind of something I wanted to touch off of here. Is we've a recession coming around now. We've got a lot of disused spaces in Ireland, a lot of disused warehouse spaces, and cannabis growing is certainly something that could fill that gap. Obviously, if cannabis was to be grown in Ireland, you would prefer for it to be grown outdoors, but it's obviously only a certain number of months a year we can do that. And it would be amazing if we could fill these unused warehouses with cannabis instead of just having empty space and no jobs. But more than 1,000 cannabis plants worth £500,000 have been found in a disused warehouse. That was 1,100 plants discovered at a warehouse off Derby Road on Saturday afternoon following a report of a burglary. So the report of a burglary led to this discovery. So the Nottinghamshire police officer seized the plants as well as sophisticated growing equipment. So there you go, guys. It was a sophisticated grow operation. It wasn't some dimwits growing. They love to throw that in there. Sophisticated, like, seriously, it's a bunch of lights and fans. Like, it's not sophisticated at all. Now, if they had like some flowing lights where they were spreading the light flow across a wide floor area, you know, and if they had maybe CO2 and very well dialed in ventilation, then it might be sophisticated. But I imagine these guys literally plugged the stuff into the wall, and it was a case of 12 hours on, 12 hours off. The lights come on, the lights come off, and you know, that's it. That's not sophisticated. Like, they love to just big it up. Like, it's not sophisticated. It was £500,000 worth of plants. Now, in fairness, it's a lot of plants, but I just don't think it was sophisticated at all. I'd love to have somebody on from let's say just wanted a big Bedrocan, you know, a big cannabis grower there over in Holland, grow it on a pharmaceutical on a pharmaceutical basis. I would love to hear their definition of what sophisticated is, and if they think that these grow houses by these criminals are sophisticated. I wouldn't imagine that they would. So some comments here from the cops. We remain as committed as ever to taking illegal drugs off our streets, and my message to anyone involved in their supply is still very clear. We're watching you, and it could be you next. I hope you're scared out there, guys. You're quaking in your boots, you know. I say you're trembling. I doubt it. I'd imagine now you're seeing the opportunity. The rival drug gang just had all their plans taken. Quick, lads, double up. There's going to be a big gap in the market there, and we have to fill that. Like, no cops, you're sending no warning messages to anybody at all. If anything, you're just letting them know that there's an opportunity in the market to be, you know, to fill the gap. Nottinghamshire police is committed to bringing those involved in organised crime to justice, but in order to do so, we need intelligence rats from the local community regarding the activities of individuals connected to organised crime groups, and I would appeal to anyone who might have any information to get in touch with us as soon as possible. Well, guys, I have information for you. If you want to know who's the most responsible in the community for these organised crime groups, it's actually you, the police, and the government who keep in place policies that see the rise of these crime gangs, you know. You need only look at alcohol prohibition in the US, what it done there, and the rise of people like Al Capone and all of those guys, who ran the prohibition of alcohol there. And what happened when they ended prohibition is these guys went away, they went into other crimes because they were criminals, whereas the guys Heineken, Budweiser, who weren't criminals, these guys were business people. They just set up their business and they worked within the confines of the law. Obviously, there's harms caused by alcohol today, but it's not on the level caused when we had alcohol prohibition in place, when we were getting many more people getting poisoned by the consumption of alcohol because of its unregulated origins. Much like what we see today in the illegal drugs market, a lot of unneeded, unnecessary deaths, and because of just keeping drugs illegal. If drugs weren't illegal, we wouldn't have as many deaths there associated with the consumption of them at all. But yeah. And in other news in the UK, we had a poor woman having her driver license taken off her because of one spliff. The woman was experiencing what she says was a bit of anxiety a couple of hours beforehand, and a friend of hers had suggested that she tried a cigarette, which was a cannabis cigarette, to help alleviate some of her anxiety. And she said it helped with her anxiety, and a couple of hours later she felt fine to drive. But sadly, upon driving down the road, maybe she was doing 20 in a 30 zone or something, as cannabis drivers are normally over cautious and not really a danger to people on the road, to be fair. She was probably driving too slow. That's most likely what she got pulled over for. Or else what happened is the cops were behind her, and the paranoia set in, and she kept looking in the mirror at the cops or something, and the cops are like, hey, she keeps looking at us, there's something up there, who knows what it was. The cops anyway, their spidey senses went off, and they pulled the woman in. They led to a drug test. They gave her a saliva roadside drug test, and then later done a blood drug test because that came back positive. And she's after getting banned now for driving for 1 year. She also got some fines there along with that. What were those fines? Do I have it wrote down here on my show notes? I do. There it is. It is... Yeah, she was banned for 12 months and she received a fine of £175, and she must also pay £135 and a £34 victim surcharge. Again, I don't understand this in the UK. Like they do this regularly with their cases. You get fined, and then you get a second charge, but that's not a fine. It's like a victim surcharge, and there's two charges with that then for some reason. So in this case, it was £134 and a £34 surcharge, or £34 surcharge. Yeah, £135 and £34 surcharge. I don't know, if somebody out there listening in the UK can explain that a bit better to me. What's the story there with that? Like, who's this woman's victim? Who's getting that money? What's the story? Is this just money for the state? Are the state claiming that they're being victimized by people consuming cannabis because they have to criminalize them? Are they trying to recoup some of the costs of criminalizing a person? I don't understand it at all. Somebody please enlighten me. I just think it's really weird that there's a victim surcharge for a crime where there is no victim. It's just like, what the hell? What the hell? And this kind of brings us then, I suppose, into the first piece of the news from Ireland then, and that the connection there is driving. In Ireland, over the week, over the last 3 days, so since Monday, there has been 3 people in Carlow and Armagh, I think was the second county, but 3 people in 2 counties got caught anyway for cannabis driving. Ridiculous. Like, this woman admitted to driving 9 hours after consuming cannabis, and she still got banned for driving for 1 year. It was one joint. She was found to have 6.4 milligrams of THC in her blood supply. The limit is 2 milligrams per liter of blood, and So she was 3 times over the limit, but being over the limit isn't an indicator of being under the influence of it. So that's the problem that I have with these cases, is that testing positive for it isn't indication that you're actually under the influence of that said substance, or even if that being under the influence actually even impairs your driving, because there's a number of studies after being done now that have looked at cannabis and driving, and it shows that the drivers tend to be overly cautious. That the problems that occur is that drivers are um, slow to get up to speed, so and they rarely actually exceed the speed limit. When parking, they're taking their time, they're overly cautious, they're checking their mirrors too much. Like, I didn't think that being overly cautious was a problem when driving, to be honest, but apparently it is. Now, at the same time, guys, I'm not saying that, rip a couple of bong hits and dive into the car and tear off down the road. No, everything within reason. I know in the mornings, if I have a cup of coffee, I can be quite jittery and a bit, jittery, definitely. And that can impair my ability to drive. But there are no laws out there defining how much coffee I can consume before I go driving. Why is it that we have it around cannabis and it's set so low? In the UK, it's 2 milligrams per litre of blood. In Ireland, it's 1 milligram per litre of blood. That's ridiculously low. And the Gardai then are gloating about this, that like the superintendent out there from Limerick at the police joint committee there last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, he said it. He goes, "Oh, we've people who they're consuming their drugs on the Wednesday and the Thursday, and we're catching them on the Sunday and the Monday." They're aware that the people they're catching by these faulty tests, basically, that they're not under the influence, and it's just merely an indication of whether the person is a user or not. And that brings me down to that this is just straight up discrimination, because testing positive for something is not indicative of you not being able to, it doesn't bring into question your ability to drive. That's kind of my point. It doesn't bring into ability to, it doesn't bring into question your ability to drive by the fact that you tested positive. So the only thing that they're doing is discriminating against you. Let's say if you're an alcohol consumer in the society, we've got a lot of information out there as to like how long you have to wait when you drink alcohol. We have none of that there at all for cannabis. If I smoke a joint now, if I eat my brownie now, how long do I have to wait until after I eat my brownie? Well, what they're saying actually is, well, you should actually wait about 2 or 3 weeks. And that's ridiculous. If seriously, am I going to be stoned for the next 2 or 3 weeks because of that brownie? Hell no. No, I'm not. Like, that's absolutely ridiculous. But will I have THC? Will I test positive for cannabis in my bloodstream? Yes, I will. And that's discrimination, because that's taking away my ability to drive, despite my ability to drive is not being tarnished by my consumption of cannabis. So it's just straight up discrimination. Sorry to those 3 people who got caught. They're now awaiting the results of blood tests, so a doctor had to be called in here. So keep in mind, guys, that this is a pandemic as well. We're in the middle of a pandemic. A doctor had to be called in during this pandemic. Doctors should be really focusing on patients, should they not? And we've got major mental health crisis coming upon us. And we've got doctors called out to guard stations to take blood samples from people so we can criminalise them for just testing positive for cannabis, not even for driving without due care and attention, not for driving recklessly, not for driving under the influence. As we've kind of stated, testing positive isn't an indicator of being under the influence at all. So sadly, more waste of time by the state and Gardai and even now doctors. So yeah. Other news, guys. More wasted time by our Gardai and the Revenue Service. So the Revenue sees herbal cannabis worth €44,000 following a search of a house in Edgeworth town. Absolutely ridiculous. More time and money being wasted by the taxpayers here on this. So, as part of an ongoing investigation targeting organised crime groups, revenue officers seized 2.2 kilos of herbal cannabis worth an estimated €44,000 following a search on the warrant. The seizure was made as a result of a joint intelligence-led operation conducted by Revenue's Customs Service, the Garda National Drugs Unit, and Organised Crime Bureau and the Longford Garda Drugs Unit. There's a lot of units at the Gardaí and Revenue. That's a lot of people. That's man hours there, That's man hours that could be used and so much more else, I'm going to report there in a minute about the increase of crime during the pandemic. And one of the increases in crime is in the area of domestic abuse. Just keep in mind, like the man hours that's going into this here for cannabis. Absolutely ridiculous. And a man in his 20s was arrested at the scene and is currently detained at a Granard Garda station under Section 2 of the Criminal Justice Drug Trafficking Act of 1996. The operation was a part of Revenue's ongoing joint investigation targeting the importation, sale and supply of illegal drugs. If business or members of the public have any information regarding drug smuggling, they can contact Revenue, blah, blah, blah. I don't think anyone here listening is a rat, so I don't think anybody's going to need any more of this information, Gardai arrested the man, and the herb is now pending analysis. Ridiculous, like pending analysis, like more lab work being done here. Labs that could be used for testing coronavirus samples. We're inundated with backlogs with the coronavirus samples, but no, let's test the cannabis. Absolutely ridiculous, guys, ridiculous, and it's just adding now to the value of the drugs and cash that have been seized by Gardai over the last couple of months. There's quite a bit. I'll report on that in a couple of seconds. Not to jump ahead of myself. Other news, guys. My buddy, just Sean O'Donovan, is back in the news today. So what did my buddy do? He gave this poor young lad 5 years for €19,000 worth of drugs. So €19,000 worth of drugs, it's, you think it's a lot, but it's not really, because we all know how much they overvalue these drugs in the court. So a 5-year jail term was imposed on a Polish national caught with €19,000 stash of 4 different kinds of drugs in the Mallow area. Judge Sean O'Donovan imposed the sentence today at the Cork Circuit Criminal Court on Lucas Markowicz. Detective Garda Dennis Howard said the accused was caught with the drugs at his home at Drumahan, Mallow, County Cork on December 4th, 2018. Almost 2 years ago, guys. What a joke. 2 years. Garda obtained the warrant to search the house on that date. They found €15,000 worth of cannabis. That's 750 grams of cannabis, guys. They found 750 grams. That's not even a kilo. €2,900 worth of cocaine, €1,200 worth of speed, and €100 worth of hash cannabis resin. During the course of the search, Gardai found vacuum packing equipment, weighing scales, and tick lists. So obviously the guy was a dealer, okay, fair enough. There's good and bad dealers out there. I'm not going to judge whether this guy was good or bad. I don't see any Vietnamese people here held up in his gaff. I don't hear of any passports being found there where he's been involved in human trafficking or anything like that. So I'm not going to judge the guy as a bad guy. He's just some dude who's been selling some cannabis and a bit of coke as well. I frown upon that kind of stuff, poly drug use and poly drug selling. I don't know about other people out there, but I prefer to buy my cannabis from somebody who just buys cannabis and who just sells cannabis, sorry. But obviously, look, I'm not going to judge too much. People get into selling cannabis and drugs for making money, and that's the reality of the situation. The defendant claimed he was holding the drugs for another person, but there's tick list there, man. There's no denying it. Come on. But look, you want to play the game, you're going to play the game. He has a previous conviction in the UK from April 7, 2015 for importing a kilo of cannabis from Ireland to the UK. But come on, at least he was supporting some Irish producer there. Like, come on, we should look good in this. At least he wasn't buying some Spanish weed into the UK. He was selling an Irish product. At least, maybe, I hope it was. Sorry, but just a little bit of a joke. It's probably not even funny. Defence Senior Counsel Tom Creed said the defendant's employer spoke highly of him and that Lucas Markiewicz was holding the drugs for someone else. Whether he was or not, look, he was caught with him, and that's that. Mr. Creed said that there was no large amount of money found at the property or any trappings of wealth. Judge Sean O'Donovan said that he could depart from the mandatory minimum. So basically the mandatory minimum here is 13 years because it went over the €10,000, or is it? No, it's a 10 years mandatory minimum because it went over €13,000. Yeah, I think that's the way it was. So he didn't give him 10 years because of it. Instead, he gave him 5 fucking years. 5 years for €19,000 worth of drugs. And he suspended none of it either. Ridiculous. Like, keep in mind, guys, 5 years, that's a cost to the state of somewhere in the region of about €500,000 for this prisoner. And what was he selling? A bit of weed. He had a bit of his own hash. He had a bit of his own speed, I'd say. That was probably his own speed. And he had a bit of coke there as well that he was probably selling. Fair enough, like, you know. Judge Sean O'Donovan, if anything, you're a bigger role. You have a bigger role to play in the sale and supply of drugs, in that you're a supporter of prohibition, and prohibition is the biggest reason why people like this are selling drugs, and it's not being sold from, say, a pharmacy. Do you know, you're a player in the human trafficking that goes on, the support, the transport of these drugs and the production of these drugs that they get to the streets here in Ireland by supporting prohibition. So I'm sorry, Judge Sean O'Donovan, it's time to wake up and smell the coffee, not the cannabis. Throwing your own words back at you there, buddy. Judge Sean O'Donovan said, I cannot ignore the similar offence he committed in Canterbury 5 years ago, and Markiewicz was jailed for 5 years without any period being suspended. Absolutely ridiculous. Like, €500,000 there now it's going to cost the state. Obviously, I know this guy's probably going to get out in a year or two. He won't do the whole 5 years because our prison system is a joke here anyway. You fellas going in there for real crimes, actually assaults and murder and rape and theft and all this kind of crap, and they're getting out because our revolving door system that goes on in the prison because of locking people up, for one, for cannabis, but two, for TV licenses and all of that other crap that you do as well. Absolutely a joke of a system that we have here in Ireland. Other news, guys, and we're almost there. 2 more articles just to get through with you today, and we'll be done then. So the next bit up is going to be covering the number of cash seizures by Gardai is now at unprecedented levels. So basically, cops are making a killing out there, seizing the money from drug dealers and all of those other guys. So here's the news article. The number of cash seizures being made by the Gardai has surged to unprecedented levels as many cash-based businesses that criminals normally use to hide or launder drug money have been closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So maybe this is a reason why we're seeing so many more seizures there around with cannabis anyway, for one. Because the Gardai and the Revenue and Criminal Assets Bureaus are aware now there's more cash there to be seized and the boys are making a killing. So far this year, Gardai have seized 16.35 million in cash, and most of that has come from drug gangs, which is more than double the amount that has been seized in recent years. So in 2019, 7.44 million in cash was seized by Gardai, and in 2018, the figure was 7.19 million. Now, guys, keep in mind, 2020 isn't even over yet, and they're after doubling what they got last year. That's scary, and they've more than doubled it so far this year. That's crazy to think. It's a real indicator that the war on drugs, it's lost. The criminals are winning. They're making a killing, and it's costing our state an absolute fortune not only in money but in lives. Lives of Gardai being lost, lives of drug users being lost, lives of patients out there who could benefit from cannabis access being lost. So many lives lost because of this war on drugs. And here we have it, like it's there that the figures don't lie. 16.35 million so far that they've seized this year. That's what they've seized. What haven't they seized? How much more money is actually out there being made on the black market from the sale and supply of drugs, where we're not creating jobs, where we're not collecting tax, and where we are putting our Gardaí in danger, and we're making them less effective, and we're putting a wedge there between the Gardaí and our communities. Absolutely ridiculous, like absolutely ridiculous that we still continue this stuff, and how anybody can support it. I just don't know. People can judge me and think I'm away with the birds and all of this stuff, but really, like, come on, how can you support this stuff? It's just madness. It's like you look at Einstein and why he said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. Maybe they're not expecting a different outcome. Maybe they like this game. Maybe this is what they want to do. They want to keep on seizing this money every year. They want the criminals to be building their empire so that they can keep coming after them, because the Gardaí get budgets every year to go after these guys. The addiction counsellors get a load of money there from all sorts of sources to help people with addiction, and there's a lot of people then kind of take advantage of those systems to get off with their court cases. People who don't really have an addiction, they're just getting caught with drugs and they just say they have an addiction then to get off of it. It's such a waste of time and money, and just so ineffective. If what you really want to do is help people and better our society, such an ineffective way of doing it. It's counterproductive, actually, to the objective you're setting out to do. It really makes me question whether that is the objective here. In terms of having drugs illegal, that it's supposed to be for the betterment of our society. I just can't see how it's bettering our society at all. Year after year, more and more drugs being seized, more and more drugs being sold, more and more people taking drugs, more and more people being criminalized for the said action of taking drugs. It's just stupid. Like, it's so stupid. When are we going to see sense? So guard officers working in specialist units, again, more of a waste of time, specialist units that combat organised crime, said that criminals have used a wide variety and mostly cash-based business to launder their money. These include pubs, nightclubs, casinos, tanning salons, fast food outlets, dry cleaners, construction companies, car garages, and a range of retail outlets, among others. However, many of these businesses have been closed for very long periods of time during the pandemic, and for those businesses that have remained open, the flow of cash through them has slowed, as more and more people have switched to card payments and away from cash as a precaution against contracting the virus. So there you go, guys. Like, this is a bit of a move there, or an indicator as to how a cashless society is. It's a bit of a kick in the teeth there for people who want to participate on the black market. It's hard to wash up money when everything is tracked and traced. It's meant the opportunity to quickly put money into cash business to get rid of it, and to launder it is either gone for these guys, or the amount they can get rid of is much lower. And one Garda source says that so that they are having to hoard the money now, and we're finding more and more of it during searches. Gardai point to the fact that there have been repeated cash seizures of between 10,000 and 30,000 in the same regional towns since the start of the pandemic. This, they said, underlined the value of controlling even a smaller part of the drugs trade in relatively small towns. The total 16.35 million in cash in the first 10 months of this year only includes caches being found during searches, mostly targeting drugs and guns. As with the figures for other years, it does not include any money being frozen in bank accounts by the Criminal Assets Bureau or other units such as the Gardai National Economics Crime Bureau. I wonder, actually, I don't think it was this year, but in previous years there was a case there where bitcoins were found, and the guy lost the codes to it. I'm going to see if I can quickly find it. Bitcoin CAB lost. Let me see if that finds it up. Yeah, drug dealer loses codes for 53.6 million euro worth of bitcoins. So the Criminal Assets Bureau there a couple of months ago, they seized, this was from February 2020, that this article is here. But obviously the seizure came from sometime last year. But the guy that they caught, so a drug dealer who amassed 55 million fortune in cryptocurrency, in Bitcoin, has lost the codes to access the accounts after hiding them with his fishing rod, which has now gone missing. How convenient, isn't it? Sorry, COVID 420 there. But how convenient, like, he had... So if you don't know what Bitcoins are, guys, just a quick update for you guys. It's a cryptocurrency. It's a digital asset that's worth a bit now. So one Bitcoin at the moment is currently worth somewhere in the region of 13,000 euro. So since back then, so that's probably gone up. That 55 million is probably maybe 60 million now, maybe. I'm not too sure. Over the last couple of months, Bitcoin have gone up about 50%. So that could be worth actually considerably more. But there has been peaks and valleys there over the last while. So anyway, the cops basically, they thought they were having a field day. I remember the first article came out and it was like CAB sees 55 million worth of assets from a drug dealer. And then the very next day, CAB can't access the money that they seized because of the nature of it, basically. Your man was able to store the codes. So it's a string of words or letters, numbers. It's a code anyway. And you're able to either save it digitally or you could write it down on a piece of paper with pen and paper. And then you can delete all digital existence of that code. And then it only exists then on that piece of paper. And you can hide that in your pocket, in your safe, or at the end of the fishing rod, as this guy claimed. And I hope to God, like, that when this guy gets out. So his name is Clifton Collins, and he's 49 now. And how long has he been locked up for? It doesn't say it there how long he's been locked up for, actually, does it? Sorry, no, I wasn't expecting to go into this. It's just a little side piece to this because as I thought of it. Anyway, like, yeah, let's say he's going to be locked up for a year or two. When he gets out in a year or two, if he still has access to those codes, he could be sitting on maybe 200 million euro worth of Bitcoin, you know, and the CAB can't do shit about it because they can't take nothing off him. They've evidence that he has it, and you know, through the trail that's kind of there. It's complicated. I'm not going to go into it. I would absolutely butcher it if I tried to explain it to you. But they know he has it, but they can't get it. So, well done to you, Clifton Collins, man. Gets a shout there when you get out of prison. And don't forget that you can go to martinsworld.ie, Clifton, and you can support the fight for cannabis legalization by making a donation in Bitcoins. Even a very small donation there, man, even 1% of what you have would be absolutely ridiculous. 1% to 200 million is fucking 2 million, like, absolutely ridiculous, man. But yeah, you know, sorry, I'll go off in tangents there again on that one, but it's just an indicator of what a waste of time and money by our state. This is money that we could be taxing. These are jobs we could be creating. These are people we could be helping. Consumers of these drugs deserve protecting, and they're not getting it. Instead of being discriminated against, they're being punished. There's addicts of these drugs, again, also being punished for their addiction, who need help and not to be punished. So, you know, support, don't punish, guys. It's ridiculous. Onwards, guys. Very last piece of news then today, and it is some crime statistics. So there was a piece there in the Echo Live, and it was regarding crime statistics for the Cork City and County region. And there was a number of them there, and as I talked about there earlier, one of them was domestic crimes. So the domestic crimes in Cork City were up by 14%. And in Cork City, there were 1,151 cases so far in the first 10 months of this year. And that was in Cork City. In total, there were 1,986 reports of domestic abuse in Cork County. Okay, so that keep in mind, okay, those reports. And then we have, that was a 14% increase. Then we have drugs. Let's go to drugs, all right? And let's deal with just Cork City for beginners. And in Cork City, for drug dealing, okay, last year, there were 154 people caught for drug dealing last year. So far this year, there have been 268 people caught for drug dealing. So that's over a 50% increase. Is it over 50%? No, sorry, that's just under a 50% increase. So we had a 14% increase in domestic abuse, and we have just under 50% there for drug dealing. Then we look for possession, okay? We have 713 drug possession cases last year. This year we have 936 drug possession cases. Ridiculous. So in total, so far this year, we had over 1,200 cases for just for drugs in Cork City. Over 1,200 cases just for drugs in Cork City. Keep in mind that domestic abuse then was 1,151. Do you know? 1,151. And then we have, that's just in the city. And then North Cork. So North Cork last year, it went from 71 to 100 for dealing. And it went from 399 to 464 for possession. So increasing again. So more time and resources of Gardai being spent in North Cork again this year on drug dealing and possession. West Cork also saw an increase of drug detection. So they seen a 100% increase there, or went from 41 to 81, so doubled. The numbers there doubled, and that was for drug dealing. And then the possession actually dropped in West Cork, so it went from 227 to 185. I can imagine some superintendent down there in West Cork giving out to a room full of guards saying, "Lads, you're leaving the side down. For feck's sake, the numbers are down this year. We have to get out there. We have to catch more people. We have to make it seem like we're doing a better job. We need to make it seem like drugs are worse and they're getting worse, and we need more money to fight the scourge of drugs in our communities." Like that's probably what's going on. Like they love seeing an increase in numbers every year so that they can go out and argue for bigger budgets to fight this stuff. Absolutely ridiculous. Like we hear of, like we have the drugs units, and we have all these drug analysis labs and everything. But guys, if you're a victim of domestic violence in the home and you ring the cops, you could be waiting quite a while for the cops to come to your house to help you out. And then when they do come, they're quite limited in what they can do to help you. And there's just a very slow turnaround time for any of this. And is it any wonder when you look at it, in total in Cork County, there was 2,034 cases for the Gardai to deal with in relation to drugs. And domestic abuse, there was 1,986. And I ask you, which is more important to people, to the general public, that it be solved? Is it better that the Gardai are doing more to help those suffering from domestic abuse? Or is it better that the Gardai are spending their time out there searching my pockets for cannabis? Where is it that they're protecting people more? And I know what my answer is, obviously, and I'd imagine ye kind of see where my answer is as well. But it's just ridiculous. And then in that article, we had Thomas Gould and the Sinn Féin councillor, the TD, for Cork North Central, my local area, and he was outraged by the numbers then of domestic abuse. But he made no comment there then to the ever increasing numbers on drugs, on the drug detection, and maybe making I don't know, a call there for something to be done around getting Gardaí to be not focusing on this. Drug use should be a health issue. If somebody is addicted to drugs, they need to be helped by a health professional and not by a professional in the area of criminal justice, i.e. the guards. The guards aren't equipped for dealing with addicts. An addict needs help. They need care. They need compassion. They need open arms. They don't need closed handcuffs. They don't need a cell. That's not what you give a person who's sick and needs help. Our Gardaí need to focus on real crimes, the real crimes like domestic abuse, other crimes which are up too in the city. Rape. Rape was up. There was 32 cases last year. There was 40 cases this year. I would hate to think that there was any Garda taking away time from a case of rape to be spent on a case for drug possession or drug dealing. That would be a sin in my eyes, that a victim of rape is getting less help because of these ineffective policies around drugs. Other crimes then, there was decreases there. There was sexual assault decreased. It was 105 last year, 73 this year. Cases of assault then, and I wonder, is this assault down just solely because of the less drinking going on now in the first 10 months of this year compared to last year? Like last year, you would have had a lot more cases of assault. There was 212 cases of assault in the city last year, and there's only 156 cases of assault this year. I think that's a reflection of less people out drinking on the streets now at night time. You have North Cork went from 108 to 58, and in West Cork it went from 63 to 53. So right across the county there, in all of the divisions, there has been a decrease in serious assaults, and minor assaults then also decreased with them going from 775 last year to 641 this year. Again, I think that's reflective of a society that's drinking less. And then that brings me to come around to being like, we should legalise cannabis because it gives people an alternative to alcohol, and it would mean safer streets, because if our streets our Gardaí are seeing less cases of assault, both serious and minor, and I think that's because of less people drinking. Well, if you give people an alternative to alcohol on the nightlife, like when people return to going back out on a nightly basis, for the reason of socialising, if they were given the option there of consuming cannabis over alcohol, like, wouldn't it be amazing if you could go out and have a choice of a variety of cannabis, and you were giving an indication as to what the cannabis was you were consuming. So this is going to make you sleepy, this is going to make you energetic, this is going to make you hungry, this is going to make you laugh, and everything in between. All of those kind of indications to be given to you before you make your purchase. Maybe you might go down to a fine wine place. I don't know of any nice wine places in around the city, but I'd imagine there's a few, and like you could have that connoisseur experience, that wine afficondo or afficondo. I don't know what the word is there for the wine enthusiast. Yeah, that's the one. A wine enthusiast, and you could equally have the cannabis enthusiast down there with them in partnership, kind of like pairing wines and cannabis. This is a thing that happens out there, especially in California. California is known for its wines, and you now have events over there where they're pairing wine with cannabis in very sophisticated ways, and these guys aren't criminals. We are not criminals. I'm not a criminal. I'm not a bad guy. I should not be locked up. The state should not be spending €100,000 a year to lock me up. The state should not be making our Gardaí less effective, targeting people like me because I consume cannabis, because I've got these damn fine tasty brownies here that I'm going to enjoy finishing now in a few minutes, because 420 News is done. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope I didn't rant again a bit too much today for the news. I didn't have a whole lot to report. I tried to bring some studies into it, but as I say, I kind of get down the wormhole on these studies. When you're reading one study, that study references about 20 other studies, and it can be very time consuming, to be fair. this is kind of a full-time job. This thing, like getting these shows out to you. Oh, yummy brownies, delicious. Like, look at that. Oh, homemade. Can't beat them. Absolutely delicious. It's got I don't know how much oil it's got in there. It's got quite a bit of oil, some RSO oil. Homemade again, gifted. There's off the top of my head, I didn't test the oil, but off the top of my head, I would imagine it would be somewhere between the region of between 60 to 80% THC. And I used about there was 1,200 milligrams went into this, and I made 9 brownies from the whole mixture. So about 120, 100 odd THC. Guys, my maths is terrible. I have to stop trying to do maths live on air. Like, there's people out there with a calculator laughing at me. Did I get through? You're wrong. Fucking stoner, can't add. Come on, like, I'm trying to do off the top of my head complicated bloody concentrations of brownies. And I'm under the influence, guys. Come on. If I can't operate a car, surely I can operate a calculator. Guys, let's go on over to the comments. Let's see what's happening out there. And sorry for chewing. Oh, that's horrible. I shouldn't do that. I couldn't resist the bite though. Like, so tasty. But it's definitely something that annoys me as people. I've watched one or two other people and they'd be doing live videos and they're chewing something while they're doing it. And I'm like, oh my God, stop talking while you're chewing. That's just so fucking wrong. So to the comments, guys, what's happening out there? And Dave, what's going on, man? Are you waiting for a few other people to comment? Because the last few shows now, man, there's someone else robbing that top comment spot from you. But it's always good to see you there in the comment list anyway, Dave, man. And howdy to you, man. It's, thanks for tuning in as always, regular listener and loyal. Linda says greetings from Mullingar. What's happening, Linda? Nice one for tuning in, girl. Appreciate you stopping by. I hope you enjoyed the show. Patrick says, what's the buzz from Galway? What's happening, Patrick? Geez, we're getting around the island of Ireland here, because next we have Corey from checking in from Donegal, and he says greetings from Donegal. What's happening? So we have Mullingar, Galway, Donegal. Where else are we coming? We've Catherine coming in here from Cork, Catherine McDonald. So nice one for tuning in, Catherine. Much appreciated. We have Ken coming in there from down in Kerry. Nice one for stopping in again, Ken, guys. Jesus, decent here. Everybody's letting me know where they're coming from. Jesus, I wasn't expecting that. We've East Cork being represented there by Chris. What's happening, Chris? And how's everybody down East Cork? Hope you're all doing good, guys. Beautiful spot. Not as nice as West Cork though, guys. Sorry. Even though you do have Youghal, like, in fairness, Costa del Youghal, like the gem of Ireland, or the gem of Cork anyway, at least. Costa del Youghal. But yeah, just West Cork, absolutely. Sorry, lads. We have Jar there from Awfully. What's happening, Jar? And then Ian checking in. Hello, mate. Having a nice joint now. Hope you enjoyed your joint there, man. That was 45 minutes ago. I suppose you're well blazed by now. And we have Sinkus Woo also from Mullingar. What's happening? Francis says he's glad to be listening as usual and looking forward to the 420 news. Well, it's all done now, man, and I hope you enjoyed it. And he says also here, Martin, don't matter if we're working or not, we're always waiting for the 420. That's it, man. Good man. And Ken says, we are watching you. 'Twas found due to reported burglary, just dumb luck. Yeah. Oh yeah, we are watching you. Yeah, that's what the cops had said there in that article earlier. Like, yeah, they're trying to be the big scary guys out there, but to be honest, I'd say there's more criminals watching the cops now than the cops are watching criminals. You see that article there not too long ago, was that 9 Gardaí suspended for corruption. Seriously, like. Yeah, got it on the growing green field there as well. Like, lads, yeah, as I say, just don't skimp out on your electronics and make sure they're well connected. Like, the last thing you want is to have a faulty electronic causing a little bit of a fire, then bringing the fire brigade down. They're only going to alert the cops don't think there's no way of talking the fire brigade out of it once they see you grow. Like you're donezo. And Francis also says there, used to live in the UK and the laws are completely different. Puts it a bit, but it's a bit better of a law over there than here. I got caught with a couple of ounces and only got a caution for the first time for 6 months because I put down for personal use. Happy to hear that, man. It's good to hear that you were able to get off with that. I was talking with a buddy about this the other day, and we were saying like, kind of, what should be personal use really, like, because you could argue any amount really personal use. Like if I wanted to actually, why couldn't I have a kilo of cannabis in my house and claim that it is personal use? A kilo, 1,000 grams, let's say. Like if I have 100 grams there of 10 different strains of cannabis, we all know that cannabis can deliver different effects. And let's say I got access to it and I was able to buy 100 grams of 10 different strains of cannabis. I'd be like, well, why shouldn't that be allowed? Why can't I say that is personal use? I would argue that it was personal use. So I would think a person should be able to have, I don't know, up to 5 kilos of cannabis for personal use. When you look at it, really, like a jar of cannabis, you could easily have a 2 or 3 litre jar of cannabis there, like a nice big kind of Kilner jar. You probably know the ones. And you could have easily 100 grams of cannabis in one of those jars and have 10 of those jars with 10 different strains. Why not? Like, and maybe even have 50 of those jars with 50 different strains. Why not? Like, really, like if you're a connoisseur of cannabis, you might only smoke a little bit per night, but like the way these things are, you can store them. If you store them properly, you can age them over time. It's a dried herbal product. It's ridiculous that, like, why is it that we limit ourselves? A person gets caught with a kilo of cannabis, straight away people are thinking it's dealing. Obviously, probably is, but why? Why? I would, like, if I could, if somebody came to me and said like, oh, I've 100 grams of like fucking, I don't know, chocolate, would you want to buy it? And they gave me a good price. Not a bother. If they came back the next month with 100 grams of a different strain, I would buy that as well if I could afford it, and so on. And before I know it, I'm stockpiling. I've got a couple of kilos of really good, well-grown cannabis, and it's all for my own personal use. What's the problem? I don't know. Anyway, so Ken says those are the figures, seizures. Can't imagine the value that it gets though. Yeah, exactly. The Garda have too much time in their hands. All these seizures is getting scary as a buyer. Might get caught in a bust unaware. Yeah, exactly, man. And that happens. People just at the wrong time, at the wrong place. You have a dealer there, as I said, maybe your dealer's selling a bit of coke at the side and that's bringing a bit of heat on him, and you show up to buy a little bit of cannabis and you get caught in the swoop. That's very well a likelihood. Francis says he doesn't use Bitcoin, but there's any other way to make donations. Possibly there in a bit, Francis, I might throw up the details for a bank account so people can make a direct bank transfer. But I'll do that in time to come anyway. But right now it's just the Patreon there. There's a Martin's World, patreon.com/Martin's World. You can sign up there, or there is the Bitcoin donation then as well. Kendon says that I'd love to have a few smokes socially in a social club. As a recovering alcoholic, I rarely go to pubs. Not a lot to do besides a bit of PlayStation. What's the harm as well, man? Like, if you have a smoke at home and play a bit of PlayStation, you're doing no harm. Except for the fact that you're locking yourself out of a potential avenue for socialization. I.e., why can't you go to a club where you can hang out and have a PlayStation there and play with other people in person, other cannabis consumers, maybe a foosball table, card nights, movie nights, book clubs, man, you name it. Like, there's so many avenues for socializing where cannabis isn't a central part of it, but it's a unifying part of it, as in it's a common ground that you all share. I think that needs to happen, and that's my aim in setting up this hub soon. I hope to have a physical premises where people can come and do these kind of activities and socialise and strengthen the community. Let's say cannabis legalization is coming, and it's only with a strong community that the community can be represented in the policies that will be made. So that's my belief anyway. That's my dream. So if you want to support it, you've patreon.com/martinsworld and martinsworld.e, where you can make donations. And in other counties, we have Monaghan. What's happening up in Monaghan? That's coming in from John. He says, big sport from Monaghan. What's happening? Oh, and Francis adding in there Sligo, and Derek is adding in from Clare. We have Teresa is adding in from Roscommon, and then Dean says, what's going on, Marty? And good news. And final commentary then from Francis. He's saying it shouldn't be a class of dealing as long as they're not all bagged up in little bags. Exactly, man. That's kind of the way I see it as well. If you've tick lists and if you've all of that stuff there, then you're probably dealing. If it's bagged up in a load of little bags ready to go, it's probably dealing. But if it's in a big jar stored, that's probably connoisseur stuff, So guys, that's it. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Hope you all enjoyed today's 420 news. As always, I enjoy delivering it to you. And yeah, I'm sorry about getting tongue-tied there once or twice and getting lost words. But look, it's live. Don't get no redos and this stuff. And yeah, I kind of like that way. I like acting under pressure. If I pre-recorded this, guys, this 1 hour recording probably would take about 5 to 6 hours recording, because I'd be so super critical of myself, and I'd be like, no, re-record that, you say that better, change this, improve that, and I would never get it done, actually, So yeah, I'm a perfectionist at heart. Guys, thanks very much again, as always. You've been listening to Martin's World with 420 News, and I'm your host, Martin Condon, guys. Till next time, stay blazed, keep her lit, and peace.